Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Martha and today I'm doing a flip through of a journal I created for a collaboration and challenge with using StencilGirl stencils. It was coordinated by Tina Walker, who is a very talented artist and also a columnist and stencil designer for StencilGirl products, and she often does different very unique and creative collaborations. Now this one was a challenge to create 26 art journal spreads using a word with each letter of the alphabet, starting with each letter of the alphabet from A to Z. And your spreads all had to fit into a theme. So my theme I chose is emotions or feelings. And I created my little journal out of some watercolor paper, and I covered the back and the front and the back with scrapbook paper that I had because I really wanted to work this quote that I found onto the cover. It says, "She runs the gamut of emotions from A to B." It's attributed by the very sarcastic, obviously, Dorothy Parker. And I just love that. I thought it was very funny and appropriate for my journal. I found this picture that I thought would be great with it. And so here we go. So the first letter is amazed, A for amazed, or first word, I should say. I had this vintage image. I like a lot of vintage items, so I kind of gravitate towards that. And I worked the page around that image. I thought she had a funny expression on her face to coordinate with that word. This one is blissful. I love the way this turned out. It's a little different than what I normally do, but this was almost dumb luck really, because I had the idea, I didn't know if it would work. Just black gesso on the background, gold paint through a stencil, and I had this image already. I just love the way that looks. Very simple. Calm. I just thought this conveyed to me a feeling of calm. Again, very simple page. I collaged some papers and just used a stencil. The only stenciling I did was this part to separate the color blocks. D for determined. I thought this poor woman had a very determined, possibly bored look on her face. About finishing her writing. Another vintage image. E for ecstatic. This is a stencil that I love. I've used it several times, and while I'm on this page, I will say that a lot of the stencils I used are available on the StencilGirl website, but some of them are exclusive Stencil Club sets, which means you can't buy them unless you're a Stencil Club member, which is a group that receives a monthly exclusive set and many other benefits if you join. The background is a club set, so that's not available, but this one sure is. This is F for frightened, and I forgot to say that I will post a link to the the stencils that I used that are available. I'll post a link to those stencils down below. Okay, for F for frightened, I had this image from a vintage book I thought worked well here. Actually, I worked the background to fit the image. Same with this one, a vintage photo. I made a copy of it, worked the background to fit the word and the photo, the image. This one, I really almost gave up on this one because, it had one of those ugly stages, but I really love the way this turned out now, and this is one of the later journal spreads I did. I did not create these in order. And it was right around the time of the protests that were happening. There's just a lot. It was a very emotional time for a lot of people, including me. And I just felt like even though things were grim, there's still always hope no matter what. So that's kind of what I decided to do with this page, or this spread. The next one is intrigued, and I used a piece of paper that I had, it's a National Geographic magazine paper that I had used Citrusolve through a stencil to remove part of the background. And that technique is, I believe there's a video on the StencilGirl website explaining that process. I'm sure there are other videos that you could find if you're not familiar with it. Citrusolve on National Geographic magazine. This is J for joy. I tried to create a bright, colorful page, happy page, joyful. It's not that I'm not happy, but I tend to gravitate towards darker colors. I don't know, and vintage. My family makes fun of me and says my favorite color is brown, which is probably true. But I still like the way this one turned out. I don't know. It's not my normal style, though. Kind, I had this image and I worked my background into that, and I did some hand stitching, which I thought looked nice, and I'm getting more comfortable with it. I'm not that great at it, but I do like the way it looks in certain spots. Lively, this is a lot of collage underneath that you can't, of papers that you can't really see, then a lot of paint, stenciling. It's kind of a Seth Apter inspired spread. I used his ATC stencil, which again I'll link down below, to create the background. Some other stencils too, but his was the main one. Now this is more my style, moody. I love the way this looks. I love this stencil. I love this scribbly word stencil mask, really, and I'll link those below. Of course, I really like, this is my normal style. This one, I don't know. I mean, I kind of like it, but I think sometimes when I look at it, it might be kind of a hot mess. I'm not really sure, but it's N for nice, and I wanted to focus on this image, which is a Tim Holtz stamp. One thing I did try to do, and it's kind of a cool technique, I think, is I put a stencil down and then just used a pencil and scribbled inside the openings of the stencil. I like the way that turned out. That's probably something I learned from Mary Beth Shaw too, but I can't remember where I learned that from. Okay, O for optimistic. A little bit different, but yet vintagey and modern together. I don't know. I think it worked out. Kind of like it. And then P for peaceful. Again, a little different and soft for me, but I do like the way this one turned out. Again, a lot of collaging, because that's what I like to do mostly. Q for quiet. This has a lot of collage papers underneath that really got covered up, but I tried to let some of them peek through. And this is a tea bag that I put under the focal image. Okay, relaxed. I had this image and then worked my background around that. I added the Buddha stencil, which I will link. I thought it turned out nice. Again, different. I used some different colors that I don't normally use. Surprise. This is one of my favorites. I just love the expressions on these faces. And this is an idea I had, and it actually worked out. Crazy. I had this mask set from StencilGirl, and I thought I would put the images in the middle and attach it to a background, and there you go. It all worked out. I love it. I hardly ever use yellow. Somehow I used it here, and I like the way it worked. And this is my thoughtful page. I learned this technique for sure from Mary Beth Shaw, which is using a stencil on a piece of plastic, and you lay down your stencil, drop alcohol ink on it. You can move it around if you want to, or just drop it and leave it, and then you let it dry. When you pick up your stencil, you have something like this. I love the way that looks. I worked my background around that, and I didn't do much to it because I just thought it all looked really nice. This is again more my style, and I wanted it to show through to the other side and kind of coordinate a little bit too. So I made this flip so you could see the image on that side, and it wouldn't compete with this background, which is the next word, U for uplifted. And this says we rise by lifting others. I happened to get this, I don't know, I found this little bit of paper, I can't even remember, and as I was creating this page, believe it or not, I was like, wow, that needs to go on my uplifted page. And the next one is kind of a different thing. I don't know, I kind of like it. It's vibrant is the word. And I had this round gel print that I created on my round gel plate, and it is also using alcohol inks on a gel plate though, and I just really like the way that turned out, so I thought I could use it maybe for this page, and so I put it on some cardstock, and then I taped it in, and then I covered it with more very vibrant paper. I attached these beautiful appliques. I don't know, it's different, but I really like the way it looks. I really wanted to sew around the edges, but I could not figure out how to do that, and also tape this all in, and it was too complicated, so I left it like that. But I really wish I could sew around it. And this next one is also very different from my style, but I love it. It's whimsical, and it's using a napkin image. I gessoed and put down some paint on my background. I laid down a stencil. I wiped away some through the stencil openings with a baby wipe, but a lot of people are familiar with that technique, and then just applied my my napkin image, which I cut out. So I love the way that turned out. So simple and so effective, I think. And here we go, X. I could not think of an emotion or feeling that started with X, but I used XOXO, and I had the idea to do a cutout. I think it turned out cute. This heart is using gold crackle paste, and this is a Stencil Club exclusive, but the XOXO is from another stencil that is available. And now we come to Youthful, Y for Youthful, and another one that I just love the way it turned out, using vintage papers. This is the stencil I used. I cut it out and applied it here with this image that's just from a clothing catalog that I thought was beautiful, and I made it into an acrylic skin, the image, using gel medium. And finally we have Zany, which is not my favorite page, but I like the technique that I used, which is to lay a stencil down on the back side of this paper I had, and I traced the openings and then cut them all out. And then my idea was, to put, these zany pictures underneath the openings to show through, and also some book paper to fill in. And I added these words. I don't know, it's not my favorite, but it turned out okay, and the idea of the technique that I used I love. So I'll try that again with a different sort of spread, different theme, I guess. So that's all. Thank you so much this is the back of my journal, for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more of my journal flip throughs, and also I'm doing some mixed media techniques that I think might be interesting to people. I'll just film them when I do them. And finally, if you're here from the blog, thank you for coming here and watching. And if you haven't seen the StencilGirl blog yet about this challenge and collaboration, please click on the link below, and it will take you to the other projects that were created by other amazing mixed media artists. So talented, so creative, just wonderful projects. So if you have any questions, again, comment below, and I'll try to answer. Thanks so much for joining me today.